You're listening to the To Write Love on Our Arms podcast, a show about mental health and the things that make us human. Yeah, it's obviously in a perfect world, we wouldn't be having this conversation. None of us want to be here. I often say at To Write Love, I'm trying to work myself out of a job. I can't wait until the services that we offer, the hope that we provide is ubiquitous, is felt by all, is open to all, is accessible by all. But in the midst of that, I think it's a darkly beautiful thing that we get to remember our loved ones in the ways that we want to. Austin, you mentioned that that Paige loved writing. And you kind of came onto our radar as a writer as well. So, well, both of y'all, Billy as well, you've written for the To Write Love blog over the past. But to start with, Austin, you wrote a piece for us called Grief After Suicide Loss. And just a little excerpt from that, you write, "The lifelong path of grief is hard. It is an unfairly weighted backpack. And anyone that has been on a backpacking trip can tell you that the pack doesn't get lighter the more you walk with it. You get used to the weight and you must carry it, but it doesn't get lighter." In what way has acknowledging that you don't have to unpack, you don't have to let go of that pain and heartache, and instead can make more space for it, how has that process allowed you to find space where multiple emotions can coexist?
Yeah, I'm just talking about this today with my father. I finally... I've been able to say out loud to my friends and family recently, I'm happy. On this trip, it's been incredibly difficult, hard. Bike packing, very similar to my analogy to backpacking. It's heavy, and you just start carrying it, and you carry it, and you carry it, and eventually, like, when can I stop feeling the pain? And then came to the realization, like, oh, you don't have to stop feeling the pain to, let the whole story in, let the joy that comes in. Now I get a lot of mix of emotions. Like right now, I'm happy I'm here. I'm happy I'm on this big adventure that's been incredibly difficult, but just so helpful in me understanding and internalizing my own life and my own grief process. So the idea that I don't have to get over the pain, I don't have to push through it, is not something that'll ever end. It's something that it's like I live with it now. My brother and I have a dark saying that we tell each other. It's we're still us, just with a dead sister. Like I'm still me. I have a dead sister. That's the only difference, is I'm still who I am, and allowing myself to feel how I feel in the moment, be present with my emotions, to feel happy when I feel happy. Just because I have a dead sister doesn't mean I can't feel happy. Those moments are often mixed with grief, or the fact that I can't go and tell her about it, or what have you in the world. But yeah, the acknowledging of it's okay to let myself feel happy, sad, any number of emotions, and let those in has made the grief journey so much more bearable, less suffering in it. There's less of me putting on expectations on myself for how I need to feel or what I need to feel, and more just letting myself feel how it goes. And some days are really heavy. Some days feels heavier. Some days it feels lighter. And so just acknowledging that my sister is not only the pain of her loss, but also her life, and what she was able to give me during that has been a lesson, hard learned, but I'm glad I learned it for sure.
You mentioned sharing a passion of the outdoors with Paige. Were there moments, maybe there still are there, or were there, or do you foresee a future in which they still may pop up, the feelings of remorse or guilt or shame of enjoying the outdoors without her? Or has there been moments where you can, in the midst of seeing that killer sunset over that mountain that you never thought you would ever get to see, like, do you see any winks or smiles there, or does that still rest heavy?
No, absolutely. I think it just allows, like I talked about presence, but it allows you just to get into presence so much easier in nature. And a lot of it is like, I would love to share this. I was never a writer to start out with. It's funny that it took losing my sister to suicide for me to actually start writing more. We'd go on hikes together, and I would always try to describe what I saw in my writing. And then I would describe it to my sister, and her poetry that came out of that was always so much better than what I wrote down. And so I find myself often wanting, like, I wish I had my sister so she could capture this full moment for everybody else to feel. A lot of my heavier moments are not tied up in the nature aspect. That's generally when we could kind of just be together, and that comfortable silence of just hiking together, walking, climbing, whatever it is, were found in those moments. So those still remain to be a way to tune into myself and listen more. I'd be lying if I haven't been upset on a hike, or if the emotion's there when I'm out hiking or on my bike now, it's going to come up if I'm letting myself work. So they definitely come up for sure. But I just talked to my brother about this, that it's such a terrible thing, but I have such an appreciation now for life and the difficulties of it. So there'll be days in lightning storms or in the snow, or things are just going awfully wrong here. And I still think, like, wow, I have such a deeper appreciation for these like really vulnerable, tender moments or really hard moments because my sister died. I now have a more appreciation for life, because I know how fleeting it can be, how quickly it can change in such a major way, that just it's an appreciation I wish I didn't have to know. But I talked about in my writing that I wish my sister could have met who I am now after her death, because I am a much more compassionate, much more understanding, empathetic person, because I've seen some of these lows in life, and unfortunately and fortunately, it comes with a deep appreciation now that I didn't have before.
And Billy, you mentioned that in your piece called "Carrying My Sister's Story." You wrote that you struggled with finding a way to move forward. You had feelings of being guilty for feeling any emotion other than grief. So ultimately, sharing your story has helped you move to and through that grief. But to what degree was opening up about that process important in how you were journeying and how you continue to journey?
Yeah, I think the timing of my sister's death really was such a pivotal point in my life. I didn't really have much of an idea of what I wanted to do. I just graduated high school. I knew I was going to college in the fall. I didn't really have a clue of what I wanted to study, exactly what I wanted to do. And losing my sister at that point really just something flipped a switch in me. And I had always felt, maybe that I had an increased level of compassion or empathy. I always related to sad songs and music and writing. And similar to Austin, I didn't write much myself prior to my sister's death, but I found that sometimes I'll feel kind of called just to share what's going on in my mind with other people, and hopefully give solace in the way that I've found in, Twillow blogs over the years, rather. But yeah, for me, because it was at a pivotal point in my life, I feel like as I went into college, I sort of found myself getting stuck, thinking that, like, if I wasn't thinking about my sister and I wasn't thinking about like her life and death, then who was? Like, how am I going to have these new exciting opportunities? Whether it's being in school, I was playing hockey, whether it was, going down to Florida to intern with Right Love, or now even doing what I'm doing, and just thinking about my sister didn't get those opportunities. Her story ended too soon, and mine's still going. And I think Austin had written about it too previously, about there was a point about 5 years in when I turned the age my sister never turned. So she died shortly before she turned 23. I remember when her fifth anniversary of her death was right before I turned 23. And so that was like a huge milestone for me to just be like, I'm older than one of my older sisters ever was. And that was kind of a hard thing. But yeah, for me, I just found, I think, trying to find a way to voice my story and share it with others, and then kind of the feedback that I received from other people, and the connection through vulnerability that I found was something that really just helped me push forward. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there was another gentleman who had died by suicide, and I had the pleasure of knowing his mom and his brother, and they were great supports too, following the loss of my sister, and reached out. And I think it's a club none of us wanted to join, but I do think when someone like that reaches out to you and expresses their sorrow for you and words of encouragement, it really hits and resonates, because there unfortunately are far too many people who can relate and who have joined this club. But I think hearing those words from people who have experienced similar things really takes it up a notch for me. And they were a huge reason why I started sharing my story. And the mother who had lost her child has done such great work in our community and surrounding communities, kind of bringing voice and attention to these issues, and does things locally with AFSP, has hosted floats in our town parade on the 4th of July, just calling attention to suicide prevention. And so she was really a huge source of inspiration for me when I was learning how to share my story. And I will note too, and I've kind of learned through Aaron Moore, who's worked with To Write Love, when to share your story and how to share your story. I think when I was really fresh in my grief, I've talked about it before, where I felt like I was like screaming from the rooftop and hoping anyone would hear me. And I think I'm much more reserved and targeted in where and how I share my story now. I think it's still great to be vulnerable, but knowing with who you can be vulnerable, you shouldn't cry with people you can't laugh with. Recognizing kind of the heavy and light of life is something, like Austin noted, is that I have a really great appreciation for now. But it took a little bit to get there.
Yeah. No, man, that's really, really beautiful reflections there. Like you both mentioned, in many ways, it kind of takes one to know one on how to grieve a loss due to suicide. And I'm wondering, in your respective contexts, when you experienced that loss, was there a network? Was there a person? Was there a story? Was there a group? Or was there something that someone did to help? Something that felt like care in a way that you didn't know you needed that care. So I guess starting with Austin, you're experiencing this loss right before COVID, right before no one could gather, whether it was for work or school or peer support. So in that doubly isolating experience, where did you go to find some support, or where did that support find you?
Yeah, that was definitely a rough portion. At the time, I was renovating a trailer to live in Truckee, California. And so I basically fully isolated myself. Not the way to go, in my opinion. Everybody grieves different. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But if I could tell myself, be like, hey, reach out to more people, for sure. But I remember immediately after my sister died, I flew back I was living in Alaska at the time. I flew from Alaska to California. And the next day, shout out my Uncle Marcus, he was like, hey, let's go for a mountain bike ride. And we didn't talk at all. But he treated me like a normal person. He's like, you're still you, let's just go for a ride. He knew I needed to process stuff. And there's nothing really you can say. There's nothing, I have not found a word or a phrase or anything you can say to someone besides embodying the feeling of, I'm here, what do you need? And he was just, I'm here. He offered the ride. I could have said no, but I was like, yes. And it was able to get out of kind of the everything we surround death with, the funeral, the planning, people feel the need to try to fix something that they can't fix, or don't want to sit in the awkward space with you. So there's definitely my uncle. I had some friends at my sister's memorial that I remember I didn't see them the whole memorial. And they drove from Oregon to California to be there just to support our family. And I didn't see them at all. and I walk upstairs to where they're at, and they're all laughing and joking. And I sat down, and they didn't stop laughing and joking. They knew just because my sister was dead, that it did not change the fact that I'm still their friend. I still want to laugh and joke with them. Yeah, I'm not saying, you should try to, be funny or use humor to cope. But it was nice to know that my friends were still there and they were still treating me like Austin and not like, just that I had a dead sister that we're not supposed to talk about because it's suicide. But my friends without skipping a beat just treated me normally. They were there for me. They drove me from the airport. They did everything they needed to do. But they didn't try to force on, their hurt on me. So I think just being there for the person, and just doing physical, tangible things that you can do, really helped me. So anytime someone, brought food over, I didn't have to worry about cooking food, was amazing. And just treated us like we were, normal people. But at the same time understood that they just need to be there for us, was super helpful for me in those early days. And then it's unfortunate that it took my sister's death for me to actually go find a therapist, but I found a great therapist, and that has led to me reaching out and being more comfortable setting boundaries for when, like Billy talked about, who you can cry with, who you can share with, and also not taking out other people's grief for other loved ones, because I'm sure Billy could talk about it a lot, and we're doing it, right now. But grieving people who are, suppressing that grief or those feelings, when they find someone else who's in a similar situation, it can be really helpful and healing. But it also can be, they can just dump it all out, because I'm very empathetic in that way already. And so there was definitely a learning period on like Billy talked about, sharing your story, and when to do it, and the right way to do it, as well as understanding where's a safe place for yourself, to not, open up wounds that are still healing, or you need more time with on your own or with the therapist.